Uber key can be very helpful to make sure the shape covers the whole area you need to build. In this case, we will also
Now we can return the merge operation to over to see doing a basic touch. First of all, we need to track the overall movement of the bridge. This is an easy one because we've got lots of nice detail and the camera is not moving in perspective. We'll draw a rectangle shape layer on a big chunk of the bricks and name our layer bridge track to be obvious. Just to be sure the track doesn't slip as the bridge column moves out of frame, we'll also go to the rectangle tool and drop down the options, choosing Add Rectangle to Current Layer. Then we'll draw this new rectangle on the next column over. We don't need perspective or shear for this as it's an easy tracking shot, so we'll just use translation, scale and rotation in the motion options. Now we can track forwards. I'll speed up the recording here as watching tracking is about as riveting as dry toast and you've got things to do. Now we have our track, we can turn on the surface and grid to make sure the tracking is solid. This is important as building a megaplate will require the entire sequence over time to be patched together accurately. Once we're happy with the track, we can turn off processing and visibility of the layer and start working on our roto. We'll start in the middle to get most of the bridge in view, then select the X-spline tool and begin drawing the outline of the bridge shape. I'm going to speed up the recording again, but note that the main takeaway here is we're only interested in the front plane of the bridge, not the background or even the sides. We're also taking care to smooth or sharpen the points using the X-spline handles where necessary. Once we've drawn the initial shape, we can once again name our layer to make it clear. In this case, we'll call it Roto Bridge, because that's what it is. Then, we link this new layer to the tracking we did earlier by going down to the Link to Track in Layer Properties and choosing the Bridge Track layer. Now, when we scrub the timeline back to the start, you can see the roto layer moving the same way as the track. We can now see the obvious problem. The roto is not covering the entire bridge. This is where the Point Insertion tool is your friend. We can use this tool to create additional points and drag them into position on the left-hand side. When it comes time to do the other side of the bridge, you may notice a new problem. Scrubbing the timeline to the end, the points we just made are moving down to a single point. This is because of a very common problem when doing this kind of work. We didn't use the Uber key. The Uber key is a keyframe state designed to let you mass modify without animating the keyframes, and it's very useful for this exact scenario. To fix our mistake, we will go back to our initial keyframe in the middle of the timeline and delete the keyframe. This means that all the correct spline point placement is now keyframed on the first frame of our sequence. Now we can go to the end of the timeline to continue our point insertion. This time, we'll make sure to turn on the Uber key so we don't add new keyframes to the spline. Once we're happy with the overall spline coverage on the front face of the bridge, we can check to make sure that it's clean by turning on the matte view, then turning off Colorize Mattes to check the cutout. This will give us a good idea if any of the background is peeking through and allow us to adjust the final. Then turning off Colorize Mattes to check the cutout. This will give us a good idea if any of the background is peeking through and allow us to adjust the final shape if necessary. Now, we're ready to move over to the megaplate module. Because this is a fairly slow, evenly lit shot with not too much going on, we can pretty much leave the settings as they are, as our rotor shape is already the right size for our needs. So, on the first frame of our shot, we can just go ahead and click Render. Depending on the length of your footage and the size of the matte, the megaplate module will have a bit of a think, then compile a plate based on the layer spline. Here, you can see it's kept most of the original frame, and then extended it based on the section of the roto that was outside the frame. We now need to save this megaplate to disk with an appropriate file name by clicking the Create button in the lower left corner. Some people ask why we don't allow this to be rendered directly to the host out of the plugin, and the main reason is because generating large plates is very time consuming, so you wouldn't want to keep this rendered dynamic. Most of the time you only need the one frame, so saving the plate to file is far more efficient. Now we have our plate, we can save the Mocha project. Before we leave, however, we're going to need the tracking data we made in the first step in order to match move the plate back on top of the original footage. We go to Export Track in the Track module and choose Nuke 7 Tracker, then copy to the clipboard. Now we quit Mocha and go back to the Nuke environment. So, since it's right there on the clipboard, let's first paste that tracking data to the node graph so it's out of the way. Next, and press the megaplate. When you draw an image operation node, we can adjust the X and Y until the image goes black, which means we're exactly in the right spot. Now we can return the merge operation to over to see the plate again. Then we need to make the plate move with our shot. Drag the tracker node we pasted earlier in between the transform node and the merge node to link it into the graph. We then want to return to the Mocha UI for a moment to get the roto shape. This will be important for isolating our megaplate to just the region we want to see. Select the roto bridge layer and click the Export Shape button. Then select Nuke 6.2 Roto, Transform and Shape, and copy it to the clipboard. Then you can close Mocha again and paste the rotor node to the node graph. Connect the mask input in the merge node to the roto node so it'll matte out the final merge. Now we need to set up the tracker node to actually match move the plate. Go to the Transform tab of the Nuke Tracker node and choose Match Move 1 point from the Transform list at the top. This won't do anything yet until we select which tracker we want to use, so go over to the Tracker tab and check the T, R and S boxes on the first tracker. This will provide all the motion we need to move the plate with the footage correctly. With this setup, we're now ready to paint our megaplate. We'll clean up the environment a bit by closing some panels and just view the megaplate read node so we can see the entire image. We're going to use the simple Nuke Rotopaint node for this setup. If we were doing anything more complex, I would use the Boris FX Silhouette plugin instead, as it's far more versatile and efficient for large paint jobs. Here, the Rotopaint node will suffice, as we're just doing a quick clone stamp job. We'll choose the clone tool from the left side of the viewer and resize it by holding the shift key. Use the bridge or frame and compile, which then gets transferred to the track series to see how they can be used for cleanup and compositing. If you have any questions, leave us a comment or pop over to the forums at borisfx.com.
Hi, I am Mary Poppin with Boris FX, and today I'm going to show you how to use the new Mega Plate feature. I will show you how to track a scene, remove foreground objects from the plate automatically, and then export our tracking data to After Effects in a format that allows you to paint and work on the new Mega Plate. The first thing I am going to do is track my plate, so I apply Mocha Pro as a plugin directly from my AE Effects panel. I launch the interface using the Launch Mocha button. And now I am going to draw a square using my Solid Shape tool around a good area of background texture. A great tip for tracking long pans is using Unlink to track. Before tracking, I unlink my layer from the track so that the information reads like an offset scanner. The shape will stay locked in place and track the pixels as they come through the search area. I will track translation, scale, and rotation only because this is a landscape shot, so there will be very little shear and perspective shifts in the background, and I will get better track results by focusing the track to only look for this type of motion. I will draw another shape over my foreground hill and people using the freehand tool. Then, using Uber key, I will adjust my shape to cover the beginning and end of the shot so I get the entire hill in one shape. The Uber key creates global changes to the shape that are independent of automatically generated keyframes. I drag this shape to the top of the layer pile so that Mocha will hold it out from the BG track beneath it. Mocha treats everything at the top of the layer pile as closest to camera, and everything underneath that gets held out in order from top to bottom. Now I turn my surface tool on so I can see what the track is doing, and I hit track forwards. You can see how the unlink process has created an offset relationship between the search area and the surface. Again, this technique is great for tracking long pans or aerial drone footage. Please note, tracking has been sped up for your convenience. From here, I jump over to my MegaPlate tab in Mocha Pro. Notice the similarities between the Remove Module tab and the MegaPlate tab. MegaPlates are ideal for shots like this. For plates with a lot of layers of parallax, expect to create many more shapes and for your mileage to vary. To create a MegaPlate, I will select my BG layer in my Layers panel, and for speed, I will select Auto under the stepping option. We could dial in specific frame ranges or step options, but I find Auto works best. The default frame range is fine for my needs, but different shots may need different frame ranges for speed and for best results. We can also define the output frame size, or I can ask Mocha to calculate those dimensions for me. I want to select a frame near the middle of the arc of the motion so that I leverage as little camera distortion as possible as the camera pans. To create a MegaPlate, we now need to tell Mocha how big the search area is, including the off-screen space. I will take my tracked shape, and using the Uber key, I will make sure the shape covers the entire tracked area from the first frame to the last frame. I will need to relink it to itself in the Link to Track Layer options. I like using the Uber key because it keeps the shape consistent over the pan. Mocha will use this shape as a basis for the MegaPlate. A small shape means a small plate. A large shape means a large plate. I will also align my surface to be full screen right around frame 110, or the middle of the shot, so that when I export tracking data, this frame will be the reference frame that will line up in After Effects. To render, we hit the Gear button and render a MegaPlate. Like the Remove module, this leverages planar tracking and temporal frame analysis to build an extended frame. And it is just that easy. MegaPlates uses GPU power for rendering, so speed will vary based on your video card. Notice, though, that we have built a large frame, but the foreground is included. To get rid of the foreground hill, I select my foreground shape and I click on the Remove Foreground button. Now my foreground is removed automatically. I can export this file from the Clean Plates section by selecting Generate Clean Plate and save it to a location of my choice. Remember, this is all based on the planar track, so for best results, make sure your track is rock solid before you generate your MegaPlate. In AE, I can now import my footage and drag and drop it into my composition. I then pre-compose the clean plate, but please note this very important step. Usually, I tell users for corner pins to move all the attributes into the new composition for inserts and similar tasks, but not for MegaPlates. For MegaPlates to line up properly with your AE composition and past the large frame, you must make sure to select Leave All Attributes in Composition. Now we select our new composition and we toggle on Collapse Transformations. What this does is it allows you to take a really large file and have it adjust the transformations of the layer so that they don't alter when you add new transformation over the top like a corner pin. This is how you keep a full-res image anti-aliased and prevents over-processing the image and losing image quality. In the Mocha Pro interface, we can now select the Create Transform Data button and select our BG tracked layer to create the tracking data from. Next, I select my preferred export, in this case, PowerPin, and select the target layer, my matte painting pre-comp, and then hit Apply. Now my matte painting tracks with the shot perfectly. If I scroll to frame 110, remember this is the frame that we set as a reference frame, you will see that the MegaPlate layer with tracking applied lines up perfectly with the original layer below. Now I can double-click my matte painting MegaPlate pre-comp and start to paint the scene. I am going to add several elements to this shot. Because the sky is so blown out, I will apply new clouds. Because the texture of the hills aren't really impressive, I will add detail to them. I will also add some new items like the Hollywood sign and do some color correction. I can even freehand paint in more details using the AE Clone and Paint tools. But the key point here is that whatever I add in this large pre-comp is automatically updated right back in place in our composition. Back in my comp, I can use some rotoscoping to apply my foreground elements back on top of my matte painting. In this case, I use the darken blending mode to get all the people details back into my shot without having to do a lot of fine roto. Let's flip back and forth to see our background set with the foreground composition on top. As a final step, I will add a sapphire tracked lens flare to bring back a little dynamic lighting on top using an adjustment layer. So here is our not so epic before, and here is our completely epic after. I hope you find this new feature as exciting as I do. I used to have to create these sorts of extended matte paintings by hand, and now with just a few button clicks, Mocha Pro can generate megaplates to help get into the process that much quicker. To upgrade to the new Mocha
bạn lên rồi bạn kéo là giữ lại đó, tốt nghiệp tốt nghiệp tốt nghiệp
Mọi người có cần đến bartender? Đó là điều mình tự hỏi rất nhiều vào năm này. Thời điểm này, bartender đang dần bị lãng quên vì không ai đi bar cả. Nhưng với TikTok, mình có thể mang kiến thức đi bar này đến gần với mọi người hơn. Ủa, vậy là khách hàng phải cần đến bartender khi đếm xuống?
Không phải nha. Bartender buổi sáng vẫn làm việc mà. Họ ở xung quanh bạn. Họ ở khắp mọi nơi. Ở đâu cũng cần có bartender. Bởi vì ai rồi cũng sẽ khác.
Bar có nghĩa là quầy pha chế.
Quầy này có thể dài 20 mét hay chỉ 1 mét.
Tender là những người ân cần chu đáo phục vụ khách hàng
dù ở bất kỳ đâu. Sứ mệnh của bartender là quan sát cho khách sự cân bằng, hướng dẫn họ thưởng thức đúng đắn.
Sự cân bằng không chỉ đến trong những ly nước mà còn ở mọi khía cạnh trong cuộc sống.
Vậy thế nào là cân bằng đối với Quyên và Nam?
Rồi mọi người sẽ biết.
mình thì phụ nữ béo rất là đáng yêu đấy, và hãy cứ béo đấy. Là béo thì là ôm rất là thích.
Tôi thấy là đúng là bây giờ cũng nhiều cái quan điểm làm đẹp thật, mà cũng có nhiều
Grow moss.
Thấy chưa? Có nghĩa là ok, import vô. Ở trong này nó cho mình là bạn kéo xuống rồi, nhưng mà bây giờ bạn cài Ryzen layer nè, nhấn ok được nè, đó. Bởi khá là ổn nha. Tiện. Là một công đoạn phụ nữa. Các bạn cái replay tự động nó sẽ cái video này, chọn vào tấm hình này, bạn vào edit, chọn cái sky replay. Tự động nó sẽ đó, nó sẽ thay vào SD. Ok sao. Bây giờ quay trở lại app, bạn kéo xuống đây. Đó, như vậy là nó on thì nó đến một tấm hình bự mega vừa rồi thôi, mà nó sẽ chạy thành video cho chúng ta chỉ cần làm một tấm hình cho tất. Đó. Rồi, tất nhiên là mình sẽ tracking cái background theo, thì mình cũng sẽ chọn cái này là transform nha. Mình load đến hiệu chắc rồi, các bạn load lại hồi nãy tracking này, ok, chọn transform và mình chọn vô cái mác của mình này và apply. Đó, thì cái mác của mình nó cũng chuyển động. Rồi, thì bây giờ mình sẽ chỉnh scale cho cái mác của mình, nó sẽ rộng đủ tấm hình này ra. scale bự lên trước cho tới nha các bạn, rồi mình sẽ mặt nạ với cái dưới nó không bị lỗi. Bây giờ dễ nè, mình sẽ cắt mắt theo cái dạng này trước đi. Ví dụ sorry các bạn. Rồi cái mắt này nè xong rồi, các bạn sẽ chọn để lên trên, phía dưới là cái phần bầu trời của mình, các bạn chọn là Alpha Master.
một mình chạy xuyên đêm, xuôi ngược các cung đèo. Dù đến chiều 30 mới về nhà ăn Tết nhưng chỉ sau một tuần, nữ tài xế Ngô Thị Mỹ Hạnh, 25 tuổi, huyện Định Hóa, tỉnh Thái Nguyên đã tiếp tục ôm vô lăng xe tải 30 tấn xuôi ngược các cung đường. Mỹ Hạnh chính là nữ tài xế nổi tiếng trong thời gian qua với những video lái xe tải màu hồng, dán hình mèo Hello Kitty. Ngoài điểm khác biệt của chiếc xe, nhan sắc xinh đẹp của nữ tài xế cũng là yếu tố thu hút nhiều